Welcome, guys, to Reorigin. And here joining us today, we have Raelan Agle. I'm so thrilled to have Raelan on. Raelan has been a friend for about a little over a year now. And I first came across Raelan when I found your YouTube channel. And I think we somehow got connected there. And you cordially invited me on. And I was just so inspired seeing the work that you're doing. Just to give a little bit of background, and then we'll turn it over to your kind of origin story. Raelan, you had chronic fatigue syndrome for 10 years. You sounds like went down the conventional route, seeing a lot of different doctors. Unfortunately, a lot of things that didn't bear fruit. And ultimately, you turned to inside yourself to realize your own healing potential. And so we'll very curious to get into that. And now you have a really rapidly growing and amazing YouTube channel. You are the author of a book titled Finding Freedom, Escaping from the Prison of Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. And you also have recently started offering online courses and support for people to help support their own wellness journey. So thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to say that, the thing that stood out to me most, and the reason why I really was so excited about and am so excited about having you on, is because when I was going through my own healing and recovery journey, it felt like there was such a lack of hopeful information out there and inspiration. And when you're struggling with a condition like chronic fatigue or Lyme, in my case, it's very easy to find a lot of non-hopeful or less than hopeful information, a lot of things that kind of keep our minds in that fear place. And what I really wished I had during that time was a beacon of hope, hearing other people's success stories. And you not only have an amazing success story yourself, which we'll get into, but at this point you've spoken with like hundreds of people and who've all shared amazing success stories. And so the fact that you are helping to get those messages out there is just a huge inspiration. And for anyone who's new to Raelan's work and channel, check out her YouTube channel. Take just 1 second to view any of the comments below any of the videos, and you'll see how inspiring these videos really are. So I'm really excited to have you on, and would love to hear your origin story.
Thank you, Ben, so much for having me. I have so much respect for you and what you do. Your videos on my channel are some of my most popular of all time. Everyone just has so much respect for you and the support that you provide in this space. And I'm just, I'm honored to be here and to get to be in the guest seat for a change. And it's interesting hearing it all summed up that way. Like, wow, that's a little surreal, just sort of thinking about that whole journey, because of course it's just been evolving over time and things happen slowly. But to think about it all, it's been a lot. I mean, for me, it really started when I was about 5 years old and my mother started getting sick and nobody knew what was wrong. And eventually she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And so I grew up with that and was intimately familiar with chronic fatigue syndrome for pretty much my whole life. And then when I was about 30, I started getting sick. I have a very similar story to a lot of people. I got a really bad flu, and then it just never seemed to go away. So there was a trigger. But of course, now that I've had the chance to reflect and zoom out, I can see all of these things in this perfect storm that led up to that moment. And it was the usual sort of really pushing myself really hard, working long hours. I was working out 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. I was always going to school part-time on the side, just had a bunch of things going. I was, out kind of drinking and not taking care of myself on the weekends. Really high anxiety, really perfectionist, really critical of myself, really kind of in a constant state of stress, and then was just extremely run down and got this bad virus, and it didn't seem to go away. And the rest is very similar to what a lot of people went through, especially people who became unwell years ago. So for me, this was, 15 years ago or so now. I went to my doctor didn't know much, didn't really know anything, kind of dismissed me, told me I was fine, and just went down this really kind of horrible path of being terrified that my life was over, having watched what my mother went through and saw that she never recovered. It just got worse and worse and worse, and her life just became a living nightmare. So this felt like a death sentence for me. So I worked really hard for the first couple of years, spent tens of thousands of dollars, did all the conventional and unconventional things that people try, everything under the sun. I could spend an hour just telling you all the things I tried. And I did make a little bit of progress. After a couple of years, I was a bit better. I tried going back to work just a few hours a day, and I couldn't do it. I was still too sick. I had been on disability leave, ended up quitting my job, and sort of coasted for a few years in the state of never having a good day, never being fully well, every day being some level of a struggle, but also having a few functional hours each day. And that I had gotten really burned out from trying to get well, just being in this fixation on fix myself. And I felt that I had tried everything. I'd read literally hundreds of books, and I'd seen every doctor I could think of, and no one seemed to have anything for me. So I just tried to find a way to learn to live with it. And after quite a few years like this, I realized I can't live the rest of my life this way. Every single day is hard. And I'd started seeing little things over the years that had promise, but just trying to keep up with my life seemed to take all my energy. So I thought, if I really went all in again, I think I could make some progress. So I did. I had the opportunity, thankfully, that my then boyfriend, now husband, offered to support us financially. I didn't have to worry about any of that. And I just got to work. I gave myself a year. I thought I can do this in a year. It ended up being about a year and a half or a little bit more before I was fully recovered, but I did manage to do it. And yeah, here I am.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. You mentioned what your life was like leading up to it, and that sounds so familiar to me, and I'm sure to a lot of others as well. But I'm interested in hearing. I'd like to go back to what that was, with that sort of turning point, and what you did during that year and a half that got you better, and then maybe we can segue into some of the sort of patterns that you've now seen, recognized in yourself, and also seen in others as you've spoken to so many. But first, let's kind of pick up where you left off there. What was that transition period, and what were you doing during that time?
It's interesting because I had an understanding of what helped me to recover as I was going through it. And now, having had the opportunity to speak to so many people and learn so much more and be so much more informed, and we have so much more information now to help us understand what's happening, I see things a little bit differently. But at the time, what I really just focused on is helping my body to thrive. My belief was that my body had the ability to heal itself. So I didn't think it was going to be supplements or any kind of medication or really any kind of treatment that anyone else was doing to me. I just had to give my body what it needed to thrive. And so I did a lot of really basic things. I really cracked down on my diet, cut out all the garbage. Incidentally, I did go on a vegan diet, and I was on a vegan diet when I recovered. I am no longer. And looking back, don't necessarily think that was a contributing factor to my factor in my recovery. But at the time, I did see a lot of other health benefits from it. But things like sleep at all costs became my motto, because I knew a lot of really great things happened when we were sleeping. And at the time, I thought it was more about repair and giving my body that ability to heal itself. And I'm sure that's an aspect, but I think the bigger one is just the mental state, because we know when we're chronically sleep deprived, it's really hard to do anything in life. Everything feels overwhelming, even when you're healthy. So I got really serious about sleep, because I'd had really bad sleep for years. And things like supporting my lymphatic system. I was doing massages and cold showers and plunges. And I started a really gradually increasing exercise program. And exercise is a bit of an exaggeration because it was very gentle. I'd seen over the years that sometimes I could do things like leisure activities that were really gentle, and I would be okay. And I think, wow, I didn't think my body could do this, because I would get such extreme post-exertional malaise. But there were little bits where I saw if I slowly increase things, I could do more and more. So I started with 1 minute a day, or 1 minute every second day, of just moving my arms, maybe some push-ups off my wall, nothing intense, just a minute of movement. And in the beginning, that would give me a little bit of post exertional malaise, but not too much. And I'd stick with it for the week. And then the next week, I'd up it to 2 minutes, that same gentle thing. And now the next week, 2 minutes would give me post exertional malaise, but 1 minute wouldn't anymore. So I just kept that up over time. And each week I could do more and more. And within a year, I could do, hour-long workouts at the gym, pushing as hard as I wanted, weightlifting, strength training, and all of that. So
Just a question about that. Did you find it challenging to find that balance, or find that discipline to not overdo it? Because it sounds like you're coming from a background somewhat type A, and we can have the inclination to kind of push it and then fall into these cycles of pushing and then crashing. So was that part of your journey, part of your experience, or did you find a way to navigate that and stay a little bit more regimented, sort of in your sweet spot, so to speak?
yeah, I had tried before that over the years. Every once in a while, I'd be like, okay, exercise. This is key. There's something to this. And I do 5 minutes of something a little bit more intense, and then it could lay me out for a couple of weeks. So I think because I'd tried and sort of quote unquote failed so many times, this time when I went at it, I just thought, I'm going to do this so small that it seems almost pointless. Like, just ridiculously small that it doesn't feel like it could possibly be doing any good, because I'd seen what the even slightly bigger things had done to me. And something about having this plan of the gradually increasing, like, okay, it's only 1 minute this week, but think where you'll be next month. Imagine if I could do 5 minutes of exercise. I hadn't been able to do 5 minutes of exercise in years. So in short, by that point, I was pretty good at sticking to it, but it's a really hard thing. Those of us that exercise a lot and we're very active, when we think dial it back, it's, I say, if anyone's thinking about doing this, or what I would say, when people would ask me, is like, whatever you're picturing, whatever you're planning, dial that down by 100, like just make it as small as possible. Because I understand it now that there was an aspect of reconditioning my body because I hadn't been exercising in so long. So of course I was out of shape. But it was more like a phobia treatment or gradual re-exposure therapy. Like, I was teaching I see now the components of our brain and our nervous system and our threat assessment systems. It was more about just slowly showing my body that it was safe to do these things. So yeah, it was a journey getting to that point.
Did you have a way of keeping track of how much you were exercising? Were you sort of writing it down and seeing your progression, or also kind of using that to make sure you don't go overreaching? Or what was your sort of process for that?
It was a really simple process. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me with questions and what specific exercises, and did you work on different body parts, different days or different weeks? I just had really no plan other than add on 1 minute every week. And if the post exertional malaise is too intense that it keeps me from sticking with this program, I'm doing too much. So I have to dial it back. So let's say two minutes one week was too much. Then the next week I stick with 2 minutes until I feel good with it. And I knew that anything I did was going to be helpful because I was so out of shape. So I didn't care. It was just move my body, try and add on another minute the next week, do it as many days as you can. That was it.
I love that. Yeah. And it's so common for us to get really deep in our heads and try and, micromanage. And especially when we're trying to really finely tune or ask these questions of exactly what types of exercises and for how long, and get a little bit overly regimented, that's actually a sign of limbic system hyperactivity, or when the brain is kind of tired and wired, it's trying to control like every minute detail of a situation. So I love your approach that it's simple. It reminds me of this Zen proverb: in structure is freedom. And you found a way for yourself to create sort of the minimum viable structure, which is just adding on 1 minute every day or every week?
Every week. Yeah.
Every week. Yeah. So nicely paced out. And then within that, you just had the self-awareness to recognize, okay, going from 0 to 1, anything I do is going to be an improvement. So I'm just going to kind of flow intuitively within that and just add a little bit of time. So I think that that can be hugely liberating for those of us who tend to get overly in our heads and overly regimented.
Yeah, absolutely. Simplicity, I think. And it's interesting to hear your reflection on it at the time, because that would have normally been my approach. I'd have a spreadsheet and a workout plan. But by this point, I'm like, no, just move for a minute. Doesn't matter what.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to one thing that you said during that year. You said that your main orientation was really to support your body or to help your body to thrive. Was that a paradigm shift for you, or how did you get into that belief system and that mindset that the body does thrive when the conditions allow for it? Because to me, it seems intuitive, but I've been in this world also for well over a decade. And I remember a time prior to my own healing journey when it wasn't intuitive. It was, in my mind, understood that, if there's a problem with the machine, you go to the doctor and the doctor fixes the machine. So was that something that changed for you, or is that something that you feel was kind of with you from the beginning?
Oh, absolutely. It changed. I used to think of one that illness and symptoms and everything sort of struck at random. So you were just sort of at the mercy of whatever was happening in your body, in the world. You had no control over it. You either got sick or you didn't. And then when you did, you go to the doctor, and then healing is something that is done to you. It comes from outside somewhere. I certainly don't have the power to do it. That's why we have doctors. What do I know? As So I got to that place because I went through, I think what a lot of us go through was that shift from, okay, conventional medicine, see all those doctors, got nowhere. So then, okay, I have to figure this out myself, which meant reading a lot of books about, alternative and complementary medical practices and podcasts and all of that good stuff, which takes you, I find, into this space of understanding your body better and getting that information that my doctor or my well-meaning doctor, my well-meaning family weren't telling me about how my body works and how much more control we actually have. So, and also understanding that my brain and my thoughts were a really big part of that, because that initially wasn't really in my equation at all for healing. It wasn't a focus. It was like fix the body, had all these different treatments going on, trying to address them all separately. And when I finally did recover, I put a really strong focus because of all these amazing books and podcasts and things I'd listened to on my mind as well. Things like therapy, journaling, unpacking and thinking about and processing any sort of past trauma, and understanding that even small t traumas can have a really big impact when you haven't dealt with them, meditation and all that good stuff. So it was a slow, gradual, empowering journey where I came to feel and know and believe that, our bodies are incredible and they are designed to heal. Of course they are. It would be silly for evolution to have built us any other way. So I just, really believed that if I gave it what it needed, it could fix this.
Yeah, yeah. And so it is a bit of a leap of faith at first. I get this question a lot of like, do I have to fully believe, that I'm going to get better, or that I can get better in order to heal? And I'm curious to hear your experience, but in mine, the answer was I wasn't fully in that belief yet. I had that paradigm started to surface in my mind, and then I started to sort of take action in accordance with that idea. And as I started to see results over time, it just solidified that belief as I went. Was that how it was for you too, or was it like once you understood that the body is this self healing kind of system, it was like, boom, it's go time?
It was more like, I'm going to fix this or die trying. And I believed with a sort of blind faith, because back then you didn't really hear about recovery, but I didn't believe it all the time or every day. I think just most days when I was in a good headspace, I'm like, I can do this. This is going to happen. But then there'd be days where you'd have symptom flares or it's just not a great day. And then I might kind of lose hope for the day. But then I could pick myself back up. And because of all the things that I did, and I did lots of different things, some of them I think just generally contributed to good health, and some of them specifically were addressing the CFS components. But this 1 minute a day movement program that I had was showing me progress. So just like you said, once you start seeing progress, that fuels your hope right there. You're like, wow, every week I'm better than I was the week before. Marginally, if you zoom out and look at the trajectory you're on, like if I keep doing what I'm doing, just keep showing up for myself every day and doing these things, I'm eventually going to end up where I'm trying to go. So it was a combination of sort of determination, blind faith, and then finally seeing some results, and that being my evidence that this was a real thing, that recovery was possible.
And on those days where it was challenging, did you have any strategies or techniques or things that you would do that sort of would reliably help you to move through those days, or shift your mindset, or just get to the other side? Or what was that like in the challenging times when you couldn't necessarily see the light?
I mean, that shifted over time. In the beginning, those days were really hard and really dark. And I could get quite severely depressed and feeling quite hopeless and didn't really have much coping strategy at all. But over time, I came to be more at peace with it. Like the biggest shift I made was just sort of giving into it. So on those really horrible days, because some of them can be hell, I would just think everything goes out the window. I have no expectations of myself. Doesn't matter if I eat leftover pizza. Like there's no expectation of this pristine self-care. And then just distraction. It's not fancy. It's just like, what can I binge watch on TV? And if I'm not well enough to watch it, I maybe just put it on and I lay there with my eyes closed and I listen to it. Just distract myself until it passes, because I came to see over time that it always did pass. Be kind of kind and compassionate to myself on those days and have zero expectations. Doesn't matter what I do. If I watch TV all day or I eat junk food, or all my routines go out the window, that's okay. And then that transformed towards the end when I saw that I was recovering. I came to this understanding that, at least for me, there was no getting better without feeling worse. So, someone once explained it to me like, when you go to the gym and you do a really tough workout and then you're sore for a couple of days, you're not stressing out like, oh my God, what's happening? I'm in pain. It's just a part of the process. So I didn't understand what was happening at the time, but I'd noticed the pattern that I have to push myself a little bit to get better. And every once in a while, that's going to bring on some symptom flares. So when they came, it was just an acceptance with it. Like, okay, we knew this was coming. It's okay. And this is the path to getting better. So I'm at peace with it.
Yeah. What I'm hearing here is a lot of self-compassion and acceptance, which is really, I think, a pivotal part of just shifting our relationship to discomfort, because discomfort is, like you mentioned, an inevitable part of any endeavor that involves progress, whether it's going to the gym or healing and recovery. There's going to be facing some discomfort, moving through it, and it's really self-compassion that opens the door for us to continue and to keep going through it. Okay, so let's get into now. You've gone through your recovery journey. I love how really amazing how you were able to take in a lot of different concepts, but also keep it simple. And I'm sure overwhelm was in there somewhere. It's always usually part of the journey. But it sounds like ultimately you were operating with a fair degree of intuition, this faith or belief that you could get better and that your body can heal itself. And ultimately, slowly but surely, with ups and downs, it got you where you needed to be. So let's take it from there. And then you starting your YouTube channel and your efforts to share more stories of hope and inspiration with others. How did that come about?
Oh my goodness. It's been such a crazy journey that I never could have predicted. It actually started. So when I was almost recovered, I thought, wow, like I have a story to tell. At that point, I'd only ever heard of one other person on the planet who had recovered. And I'd been through this 10-year journey, and I'd also had, grew up decades with a mother who had CFS, and we also suspect her mother had CFS. And through my journey, I'd actually ended up, moving around and living in 5 different countries. This is a story that needs to be told. I felt there's something here. So I decided to write a book. So that's where it started. And oddly, the YouTube, I thought that books were really important to me. So to me, that was the best way to get my story, my information out for hope, for if there's something in there that would be useful for somebody else. But then I very quickly realized that when nobody knows who you are and you publish a book, nobody reads it. It's just impossible for anyone to even find. It's buried under millions and millions and millions of others in searches. So I started thinking about, okay, I need to change my approach. And I was just looking at what is the current kind of modern day way that people are taking in information. And it's YouTube is a massive one. I was terrified, so terrified. And I put it off for about 6 months, just dreading it, but also kind of knowing deep inside that if this was important to me, I was going to have to do it. And then I just started it up. It was just my cell phone and, no lighting or like no equipment. And I just very terrified, started putting out videos. And I thought, I'm just going to tell my story and share all the things that worked for me. Because at that time I thought, not that it would work for everybody, but this has got to work for some other people too. But I very quickly realized that just my story wasn't enough. And I wasn't quite the subject matter expert on the topic I thought it was. You feel like you are after you've gone through 10 years and just healed yourself of something that the world told you couldn't. I'm like, I've got some stuff to share. But I quickly started realizing how different people's journeys were. So I thought, let me see who else has recovered. There's got to be more people. And I'm like, I'll search. Maybe I'll find 5, but I'm going to find them and I'll get them on the channel. So that started to be where I thought the value was going to be. And very quickly, I realized there are people recovering all over the place, and which was so mind-blowing because the message that I had been receiving and that my mother had been receiving, that was virtually nobody recovers. So who are these people and how are they doing it? And how do we all not know about this? So I just got really invested in getting as many stories as I could out, always thinking I was on the verge of running out. But over time, I started to realize there's no way to keep up. There's so many recovery stories out there. It could be full-time job of I don't know how many people. We still wouldn't be able to capture them all. So yeah, it just sort of evolved from there.
That alone, that there's so many stories and you feel like there is just a limitless pool of people who now have recovered. Maybe it's been there for a while, but it's hard to say whether we just haven't heard about it before because there wasn't someone like yourself who was really honing in on this and helping people or giving them a platform to tell their stories, or if there also is some I like to believe that there's also some collective conscious and some collective sort of belief effects that happen that really spread, kind of like the Roger Bannister effect, the guy who broke the 3-minute mile, and then everyone was able to do it after that mental barrier was broken. But I really think that there is something to that here, where when you put out stories of healing and successes, when people have been coming from a lot of searches that didn't yield fruit, and now they start to get into that mindset, the more you tune in to those success stories, the more your brain begins to believe that it's possible for you because others have done it. And I think it just builds to this sort of collective wisdom that healing is our nature, which, just taking it to purely a physiologic level, that alone will calm the nervous system, which does profound things for our healing and recovery. So, okay, I'm curious to know, because now you've interviewed, I don't know, I think well over 100 people. What have been some of the common patterns or common threads? I know everyone's healing journey is unique and everyone's history is unique, but what are some of the common threads that you've seen, again and again throughout all these different interviews, or maybe a majority of them?
It has been such an interesting journey seeing the patterns or lack of patterns. Because when I first started and I was interviewing people, and it wasn't that many at first, right? Because at first I couldn't really find them. I didn't have this never-ending supply sort of wait list. But it seemed very random and all over the place. Like it felt like I was actually starting to wonder, I'm like, I hope I'm not doing more harm than good with this, because I feel like I'm putting out so many different messages and I'm just adding confusion to the mix. But then I thought, you know what? Things will resonate for different people. So let's just put everything out there. But in the beginning, it just felt sort of like, oh, it was a carnivore diet that did it. Oh, it was a vegan diet. Oh, I went to see a shaman in the jungle in Thailand and did kambo, like the frog poisoning. And then I was healed. And I was just like, wow, this is just so mysterious and so random. But then very quickly, the theme started to shift into a lot of people, to put it simply, sharing their story and essentially telling me that happiness fixed them. Like, I realized I had to get out of a really intense, high pressure, stressful job, or I was in a toxic relationship, or, like a younger person, I realized that I grew up with a parent who was a narcissist and I had been living under extreme stress and I needed to break away from that. Or I started meditating and now I'm better. And it was bizarre for me and a little bit also made me uneasy because I thought, I know, my viewers were growing. I thought I have these people in really rough places, like going through an absolute nightmare, and they're coming to these videos, like for hopefully some answers. And the answer I'm giving them in videos is like, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy.
Yeah, I'm like, people have to be getting so frustrated with this because this doesn't sound like a real answer or a real solution to such a severe and devastating condition. But then, thankfully, because we're in this information age where, it used to take decades for information to trickle down kind of to the mainstream world, uh, we started hearing about things that at first I thought were just kind of woo. Then I started realizing, oh my goodness, our understanding of what is happening here in the last decade or so has rapidly changed of symptom creation and symptom relief in our body, of the role of our, threat assessment systems and amygdala and limbic system and autonomic nervous system. And there's actually something to what all these people are saying. All these people that got better by addressing trauma, removing, stressful relationships, meditating, going to therapy, all of that stuff. There's science to back what they went through. So now the theme I see is that the biggest piece of recovery that people share in the interviews that I do is something that addresses that component. And now people have a better understanding of it too. So now people are showing up saying like, oh, I watched a video. I watched Ben's channel. I learned about all of this stuff. So I started addressing these things in my life. I started doing specific, brain training or different activities and just really understanding more what's happening and taking control of it. And I always think, when I look back now, I said my understanding of my recovery is much different now. So I realized now that I was addressing my autonomic nervous system. I was doing brain training. I just didn't know that I was doing it. And if I had had this sort of information and knowledge, I could have sped up my recovery, I think, quite a bit. So that's been the biggest sort of evolution of what I've seen of recovery. And the bulk of people will cite these components as the biggest contributing thing to their recovery. But there are also people that very much have shared that there were other things that were also necessary to be done. Like they had to address their gut health, or they had some different sort of physiological things going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was when I was thinking about that question. One of the questions that came to mind was, or the first question that came to mind was, what was, out of all the interviews you've had, what were some of the most, or the things that surprised you the most? Which I'd like to hear, but I'm sure there are many, and you mentioned some of them, like the shaman in the jungle. And I think one of the things that happens when we speak to other people who are on a healing journey, or in some cases who have gotten better, is you just hear surprising stuff because everyone's done different things. I'm sure you've done all sorts of out there stuff. I have as well. But I think the interesting question is really like, what are the commonalities? And it's interesting that at first, when you just had a few, like a smaller sample size, it's like, there's no commonalities. Everyone's doing completely different stuff. But it's interesting to hear that when you started to speak with more people, there was this sort of signal starting to rise above the noise. And for me, it's so interesting to hear that the first signal that you got was this element of happiness. And so I'm curious, of those ones that you really, those initial ones that you noticed, like, okay, this is kind of a common theme here. You've mentioned, like, the brain retraining and the back engineering of it, or that we now can look back in retrospect and have an understanding of how and why happiness leads to improved autonomic function and immune health and all of these different things. Were those people doing something consciously to cultivate their happiness, or did you find that it was more something that they kind of stumbled into, or just a disposition that they had that happened to be a trait that coincided with swifter recovery?
I'd say in the last year, there's been a rapid shift of people who were doing things consciously. I think because there's so much more information out there available now. So people are more aware of what's happening, and they do specific, programs that address, brain training or your nervous system. But it felt like, leading up until then, it was more of a intuitive thing or something that they suspected, because people started putting together that even if they didn't understand the whole autonomic nervous system, all of that threat assessment component, they started to zoom out and say, okay, initially I thought it was this virus or this whatever it was that set off my condition. But now that I really think about it, like my life was really stressful and tough leading up to that point, and just started to think, okay, that might be a good starting place to address that stress. Maybe it's not going to be the full answer, but I need to start there. So yeah, I think it's been a gradually evolving approach as more and more information becomes available for people.
At this time, what gives you the most hope? What gives you the most inspiration to keep doing what you're doing? And also just when you look out into the world of YouTube and beyond, what keeps you running?
It is seeing so many people get their health back and their life back after so many years of struggle. I've talked to so many people that even if, lots don't want to come on the channel, it's not for everybody to put themselves out on the internet and share their story. But, so many people that are like, I was sick, I've been unwell for, 37 years and now I'm fully back. So just knowing that there doesn't seem to be any instance, at least that I've seen, where there's no coming back for it and there's no reason to be hopeful. Because we used to hear a lot years ago that the longer you were sick with these conditions, the smaller your chances of recovery are, which really just adds to the stress. With each passing month and year, you're like, oh my goodness, the clock is ticking, I'm doomed. So it's just nice to know that that doesn't appear to be the case. And also, there's so many people. I think of it like, I don't know what the best analogy is, but like I just picture a bunch like these armies isn't the right thing because it's not a war thing, but all these people who are recovering, so many people are out there passionate about trying to spread the word and help other people. So the ripple effect, I wish we could see a map of the world and just how that information is spreading and all the people everywhere who are recovering and the ripple effects that they're each having around them and how that's spreading and spreading. And we still have millions of people that are struggling. So we still have a long ways to go, but this rate at which information is becoming available, the level of support that is available, and the research and the insights that we have is unprecedented. And the trajectory that is going on, it used to be kind of flat or non-existent, and then it slowly started rising up. And now, I think it's really rapidly going up. So it's never a good time to get a condition like this, but there's never been a better time to be hopeful and to believe and know with good reason, not just blind hope, but that there's something out there that could help you and that you can get past this.
Amazing. I just got this visual of like these different nodes in a network, almost like neurons in a brain spreading out and, creating another node and then branching out from there. And that
Yes.
really is, how it is, right? You share success stories, someone else follows in their footsteps and becomes that uplifting or inspirational story for others. And we're seeing other channels. My channel, this channel that viewers are watching now, is largely a testament to your channel, Raelan, who you inspired me to eventually take that jump and start a YouTube channel. So it just shows that you are really having a profound impact, and anyone who is going through a condition and taking these steps and sharing their own healing journey in whatever way that might be. It doesn't necessarily need to be out on the internet. Like you said, it's certainly not for everyone. But even just, relating it to a friend or family member can really have a profound and positive effect. So I just want to thank you so much for everything that you've done and that you're continuing to do. And please share, with our viewers, anything that, first of all, where they can find you, anything that you have in the works, and anything else that you'd like to share.
Sure. Yeah. Everything that I have out there is basically just under my name. My YouTube is the biggest place that I put out information. It's just Raelan Agle. I also have a website, raelanagle.com, that has all of my resources. And I'm laughing because I call it the ugliest website on the internet, but it's there and it's easy to navigate. And once finances permit, we'll make it a little bit more fancy. But also, I've had for quite a long time now a lot of people reaching out to me asking if I would do coaching or if I have any sort of like course or place where, just because I now have, I think, about 350 videos on my channel, and it's great that there's all that information, but it's overwhelming. Like, where do I start? So is there some place where everything can just be condensed, where I can just find everything in like small, easy, bite-sized chunks? So in response to that, I have put together a course that is what people have been asking for. It's just a simple, do at your own pace online course that is about understanding the autonomic nervous system, of our understanding our threat assessment systems, and the information that will help you know how to navigate your recovery, and then some simple tools to start using. And there are lots of different courses out there that cover this. And I think everyone responds to different things. So for the people who have really responded to me and my channel, this is something that it seems that they would appreciate. So it's called Brain Training 101 for ME/CFS and long COVID recovery. And you can find that on my website as well.
Love it. Yeah, you certainly have a wealth of knowledge and have really picked out those patterns, those signals through the noise, and it's just filled with hope and inspiration. So I agree. There's a lot of different routes people can take. Fortunately, there's a lot of options, and I always like to say that I think the best route is the one that most resonates with you. And Raelan, obviously, your channel and your story and the stories of others that you're helping to share resonate with so many people. So it's been a real pleasure and a privilege to have you join us today.
Oh, the pleasure and privilege is absolutely all mine. Thank you so much for having me, Ben. And thank you for everything that you do. Just so much gratitude that you're out there in the world helping as many people as you are.
Likewise. Thanks, Raelan. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us and have a good day.